So excited to be chatting with everybody tonight about Kids Deserve It, Chapter 19. I'm thrilled to have all of you here. I'll give everybody a couple seconds to get logged in before we go ahead and jump right into this chapter. This chapter we're talking about tonight is going to be all about self-doubt. It's called Head Held High, Chapter 19. Love to know where you're from, so if you want to just type in where you are listening from, just to kind of give me an idea of where people are all over the country this morning, or this morning. It's been a day. This afternoon, evening, where everybody is from, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Oh, awesome. All over the place. That's great. North Carolina, Connecticut, South Dakota. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here today to talk about Chapter 19 of Kids Deserve It, which is Head Held High. This is a chapter that I wrote that just tells a little bit of my story. And kind of something I went through a couple years ago. You know, one thing in education that we all deal with is self-doubt. That feeling that we are not doing things good enough, that we could have done better, all that kind of stuff. We've all been there, we've all experienced it. And, you know, I think about my path as an educator. I taught for 7 years. At the middle of my 7th year, I was invited to apply to be a principal at an underperforming school, and I applied, got the job, and one of the things we had to do was restart the campus over from scratch. So I filled the campus with new employees. A couple of the ones remained that I rehired back in a different district than I was at before. But it was a 4th and 5th grade campus, and it had to be reconstituted because of underperforming scores for several years. And so we went in, and we went full force. The team we put together was just a great team. They worked really hard to get those kids where they needed to be for those 4th and 5th graders. We had after-school tutoring we had before. We had meetings with planning, and I brought in a bunch of my friends, really awesome educators like Aaron Klein, Angela Myers, people like that, to really work with my staff to get us to where we needed to be. And, you know, we spent a lot of time investing in kids. We spent a lot of time reminding people how much they matter. We spent a lot of time really building our kids up because the population we work with can tend to be a very beaten down population. You've heard me talk about it. I've talked about them quite a bit and the kind of things they go through. And our whole goal, obviously, was to keep our school board happy, our community happy, the state happy by raising our scores. And we took the test that year. We felt fairly good about it. And our results came back, and we didn't know where we were going to be with how we were going to be rated. And I remember sitting with all the other principals in a meeting in August, or it may have been July or August. And I was sitting there, and we went through each campus because they had gotten their reports back, and they were announcing them to us. So each campus, in state of Texas, we had to meet 3 of the 4 indexes to be considered successful. And I remember going around the table, and I was the last person at the table, and I thought, great. And so I didn't want to look at it till we got to it. And each campus celebrated either reaching 3 or all 4 of the indexes. So we clapped, we were happy, we were celebratory, we were just so glad that our campuses were doing better. And then it got over to my campus, and we opened the packet, and I look at it, and I realized that I had only met 1 of the 4 indexes. We were close on the other ones, but we'd only met 1. And I was crushed immediately. I was embarrassed to be in front of those other administrators, and then having them look at me like, oh, look, Todd thought he was doing all this great stuff. And nobody said that, of course, but in my head, that's just what I'm hearing. And I was so embarrassed. And I went home, and I remember driving home, and I remember crying my whole way because I was so devastated about the scores. And I have 2 really good friends of mine that I talk to almost on a daily basis. Brad Gustafson, who's a principal in Minnesota, and Ben Gilpin, who's a principal in Michigan. And, you know, they're my crew that we all just, we share our stories, we work through it. And I remember doxing them, and I said, I'm not a good principal, clearly. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe this is a sign that this isn't what the career I'm supposed to be in. They're not going to be happy that I didn't meet these things. And I felt like an utter failure. And they really took a lot of time to speak some truth into me and remind me that we couldn't let one day define all the work we had done. And we couldn't let one test define all the work we had done, because as anybody who's in education very long knows, that one test does not define anything. It gives you a snapshot, but that's about it. And so I needed somebody in my life to put that in perspective for me, to remind me that we did a lot of great things. We changed lives, and we really helped redefine a system in Navasota with some of the things we were doing. And we pushed boundaries, and could we have done better? Yes, we can always do better. And I sat there and I remember calling Ben. And I told Ben, I said, I'm so embarrassed. I said, everybody's going to look at this. Everybody in the district's going to say we knew Todd couldn't do it. Because when I took the job, I remember somebody in my former district, somebody I really respected that was in a place of power and authority in the district, had said, good luck, but you have no idea what you're in for. It's not just building people up. You've got to know other stuff, and I don't think you're ready for it yet. And in the back of my head, that was the first thing I remember. That was the first thing that came to my head whenever the scores weren't there, was they're going to say they were right, and I had no idea what I was doing. And it was incredibly defeating and embarrassing. And when I called Ben, Ben was like, you need to share this story. You need to write about it. You need to have it out there. You need to let people know. And I was like, it's too much. And he said, no, he said, people need to hear that people that they respect and that they see show these great things, we have moments where we feel like utter failures as well. And so I wrote about it, and it's funny to me how much positive feedback chapters like this chapter get, just because it's easy for us to forget that everybody feels doubt. And this is my third year being an administrator in Navasota. I was at Navasota Intermediate my first year. Like I said at the beginning of this Periscope, it was a 4th and 5th grade campus. And then the district did some reshuffling of schools, where the 4th and 5th became a pre-K5. Our K3 became a pre-K5, so we could kind of spread the love and make things better. And I had 350 kids at Navasota Intermediate. And I remember the school board coming to me and asking me if I would go over to Webb Elementary, where it was twice the kids. I could bring my staff with me, all that kind of stuff. And, that was a great vote of confidence, too, from the school board to ask me to do that, because they thought I did a good job. And now being at Webb, Webb was a struggling campus as well. And last year, we met 2 of the 4 indexes. We were a couple points away on the 3rd one. And so I went through the whole thing again. I had a little bit better head on my shoulders and a little bit better perspective to look at it and go, wow, all the work we've done with a brand new campus, with new staff, with all these changing things, you can't get lost in one day of scores. Or 1 week of scores, or however your state or area does it. And I was reminded of that so vividly today. We took benchmarks this week to kind of see where some of our kids were as we prepare for the end of the year exams. And I could tell that some of my teachers were feeling a little bit defeated by the scores, because we have such high expectations, and we know that we work really hard for these kids. And it's incredibly frustrating when you see the kids working really, really hard too, and they don't get the score they wanted on the exam. And I look at it as kind of one of those things of, God, that I hate that there's so much pressure on that, because that kid feels like a failure. And I want to say, you rose 5 points. Do you know how huge that is? You rose 5 points. Because for some kids, I always think of that Rita Pearson video where she said she wrote a +2 on a kid's page. And he was like, but didn't I fail? And she's like, yeah, but you got 2 right, so you're on the road. And so I always think about that. And so I called all of my teachers together today, my 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers. And we sat down, and I said, I know you've looked at the scores. I know you some of you are happy, some of you are not. So but the first thing we're going to do? Here they are. I printed them out for you. I want you to find one thing to celebrate. And a couple of them were like, I don't know what to celebrate with this. I don't know. And I said, did somebody pass you didn't expect them to pass? Did somebody raise a couple points? Are you proud of the work that somebody did? And just being able to find that silver lining and see, because with kids, you've got to celebrate with them too. You've got to help them see that there's hope. you're on the right track. And we really break it down with our standards and teach kids about, what, you've mastered this standard. You may not have the whole thing down yet, but you've mastered this standard. And so getting back to this chapter and being the head held high, I think it's just important to remember that all of us deal with doubt. Every one of us thinks, do I have the skill set? Am I meant for this? Isn't there somebody better who could be doing this? Why was I selected? Clearly I don't know what I'm doing. The kids don't like me. My coworkers don't like me. The school board doesn't like me. Whatever you may or may not be feeling. But I think it's important to remember that it's in those moments of doubt that we are given an opportunity to show the power of hope, of growing in that darkness. I was at a White House Champion of Change reunion event, and one of the speakers made such a beautiful imagery response to something that it is just stuck in my head. And it was, as she said, do you know that a seed starts growing in the darkness before it ever sees the light? And that just continually has reminded me of the last 2 weeks. So I heard about 2 weeks ago, and I just think about that. I think that's such a powerful way to think about things, is that we grow sometimes the most in the darkness before we even begin to see the light that's going to help us grow even more. And so remember that as sometimes the November and December months are very difficult, and we begin to doubt everything, which is why it's so great we get a holiday break, because we need it. But I was talking, a friend voxed me 2 days ago or yesterday, and he was telling me the same thing. He was like, I know these are the hard months, and I'm trying really hard to keep it together. And we all are like that. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what level of success you have reached, or what you have done that people think is fantastic, or what you have done that you think is fantastic. We all have those moments where we think, I am a loser. I don't know what I'm doing. Or maybe we don't all. I definitely have those moments on almost a daily basis where I think, oh my goodness. But I'm so glad that I get to I make it a point to make sure that I surround myself with people who will remind me of who I am, who will remind me that we are doing great things for these kids. And being an educator, I wrote a blog post last week called Remembering My Why. And it was just something that happened with a student at my school. We had a family Christmas program, and he was not supposed to stay because he did not have a ride home, and no parent was going to be there. But he ended up staying, and I didn't know it. And I went to go lock up, and I closed the front door, and I'm never really paying attention when I leave, and I glanced over to the side, and I saw somebody sleeping in one of the chairs in the office, and I was like, who is that? And I walk over, and I pull off his hoodie, and I was like, what are you still doing here? And he was like, I wanted to stay. And I said, is anybody coming to pick you up? And he said, no. And I said, okay, come on, get up, come with me, I'll take you home, let's go. And he stayed because he wanted to be with his friends. But his friends were his teachers, and he wanted to stay and spend time with them. And as I took him home and dropped him off, and this is like 8:30 at night, nobody even cared where he was. Nobody ever came looking for him, tried to check on him, nothing. It just reminded me that our job in education, it's so much more than teaching a child how to pass a grade, how to pass a course, how to pass a test. Our job is we have to be the parent, the provider, the person who gives them love, hugs, high fives, takes them home, goes to their games, gives them snacks when they didn't have any snacks, breakfast when they couldn't afford it, lunch when they couldn't afford it, who gets to know them on so many levels, that we have to keep our head held high, because what these kids deserve is they deserve us to be at our best. And we are not at our best every day, and we have those moments, but it's important for us to continually remember that they don't have the time to waste. And so just like leave it in your car, the chapter that we've talked about before, we've got to leave it. We've got to show up. We've got to say, you know what? I may have not been very good yesterday, but I'm going to be better today. So remember this week and the rest of this year that every single one of us deals with doubt. Every single one of us has those moments where we want to drop our head in shame and feel like we don't deserve to have the career that we have. But we've got those little eyes, little ears, and little hands that expect us to come back every day and be the best we can for them. And I look at this situation that I've gone through with the scores and being an underperforming school and trying to pull us out of that and watching my team work so hard to get where we need to get. And I just think, you know what? we've got to keep our head held high and keep marching and doing what's best for kids. Because in the end, that is what really matters. I hope all of you can join our Kids Deserve It chat tonight. That'll be right after this at 8 o'clock as we talk a little bit more about self-doubt. And find some time to encourage someone around you, because everybody feels like they're not very good at one point or another, and the best thing we can do is spend time encouraging each other. Hope you have a great week and a happy holidays, and I'll be back next week.